In Parshas Korach, we're taught about Korach's rebellion against Moshe and Aaron. I want us to explore the perplexing nature of this conflict. So the opening of this week's parasha has Korach together with 250 distinguished men. And the Pasuk says how they assembled against Moshe and Aaron and said to them, "You take too much for yourselves. The entire congregation are all holy, and Hashem is with us, so why do you raise yourselves above Hashem's assembly?" The Midrash after this pasuk then goes on to add some other arguments Korach had with Moshe. The first argument is found in the Mizpah Rabbah. The pasuk says, "And Korach took." So what is the argument the Midrash is referring to in this pasuk? See, prior to Korach taking, Moshe was addressing the Yehudim, telling them to make for themselves tzitzis. As soon as Korach heard those instructions, he jumped up to start arguing with Moshe on every detail. And he said that the talis is entirely made of techeles. Is it really necessary to add tzitzis of techeles? He was mocking Moshe. He was saying, why do you need one strand from each corner of strings on the talis to be techeles to make it valid? If the whole talis is techeles, without these 4 strings of techeles, is not valid? Another example the Midrash brings is Korach's argument about mezuzahs. Korach argued, why does a house full of Sifrei Torah need a mezuzah on the door? Surely a Sefer Torah, which has 275 portions in it, is more holy than the mere 2 portions of the Torah written on the mezuzah. Korach used these arguments to claim that Moshe hadn't received the mitzvahs from Hashem. Rather, he invented them on his own. Why did the Chachamim feel it necessary to tell us about the arguments of mezuzah and tzitzis after Korach's original argument? See, using the backing of these 2 arguments, the argument of if you have a whole garment of techeles, you shouldn't need 4 strings of techeles, and if you have a whole house of Sifrei Torah, you shouldn't need a mezuzah on the door. So too, Korach argued, if you have a whole community of spiritual people, you shouldn't need Moshe and Aaron as spiritual leaders. Now, why did the Midrash find it necessary to give us 2 examples with the same meaning behind it? Why not just give 1 example to make the point? So the Gemara in Sanhedrin says that anyone who sustains an argument is transgressing a mitzvah d'oraisa. Do not to be like Korach and his assembly. So this is confusing because how could the Gemara deduce that anyone who's engaged in a fight is perpetuating the legacy of Korach and violating this mitzvah d'oraisa that you shouldn't be like Korach? So in order to understand this, we have to get back and discover what the essence of machlokes is. When did the first machlokes occur? We see in the Torah the first time the concept of conflict occurs is during the 2nd day of creation. The Torah tells us how on the 2nd day Hashem said, "Let it separate." This created the separation between the waters of the heaven and the waters of the earth. And it's interesting, Gracious Rabbi points out to us that when talking about the 2nd day of creation, unlike any other day in creation, the words "and it was good" wasn't said. The Bachanina tells us the reason for this is because on that day, division was created. And according to Rav Tav Yomi, even if the division of the waters was for the purpose to fix and stabilize the world, it's a negative trait and it can't be considered good. Even more so, the spiritual ramification of causing division and arguments, which is purely destructive. Now, Shmuel says that we shouldn't despair because Hashem's work with the water wasn't completed on Monday, but on Tuesday. And that's why on Tuesday it's written, it was good twice. Once for the work with the waters and once for itself. And the Pasuk says, all the lower waters retreated to its places so that the botanic kingdom could emerge. Now, Korach didn't only represent a particular argument over a particular issue, but Korach embodies the concept of a fight. So let's take a look at the connection between Korach and every argument that occurs. So much so that the Torah harshly says that anyone who argues is transgressing this mitzvah d'oraisa of not to be like Korach. So why does Korach embody the concept of conflict? Let's understand what's the connection between Korach's argument with Moshe and Aaron and the separation of the waters in the 2nd day of creation. The Rambam writes in Bereshis that the 6 days of creation correspond to the 6th millennium of the world, and the 7th day of creation corresponds to Mashiach. Day 1, the first 1,000 years, day 2, the second 1,000 years, day 3, the third 1,000 years. You get the point. The first 1,000 years is the era of Adam, who lived close to 1,000 years. The second 1,000 years is the era when the Mabul happened. There was a major separation between Hashem and the world. That's also the generation when the Tower of Babel occurred. The word Haflaga also means separation. Now what happened on day 3 of creation? We know the Torah was given in the year 2448, since creation in the midst of the third millennium. When Hashem created the world, he made a decree that the heavens belong to Hashem and the earth he has given to humanity. And that's why before the Torah was given, a Sefer Torah that was written on parchment, the parchment wasn't holy, because the parchment belongs to humanity, so it can't be made holy. When Hashem wanted to give the Torah, he nullified the first decree so that the low ones could descend to the higher ones, and the higher ones could descend to the low ones. Now, if Monday represents conflict, Tuesday represents the healing of that rift. The third day, Wednesday, is the coming together when the decree is absolved. Now, Korach embodies the essence of conflict. The genesis of conflict is from the first Monday of history. Essentially, what Korach wanted to do is to go back to Monday. He wanted to completely undo the healing of Tuesday and reclaim the conflict of Monday, because he didn't want the third millennium, which represents the giving of the Torah. And that's why he staged a war with the messenger who gave us the Torah. But why Korach, and what does he represent? So Korach is spelled Kuf, Resh, Ches. And these letters are a derivative of Hey, but a distortion of Hey. The Hey has an upper line, its roof, one vertical line to the left, which is connected to the roof, and the left vertical line leaves a small gap between the roof of the Hey. Kuf, the line extends, Resh lacks a left leg, and Ches is a perfect Hey, but has no gap. Korach wanted to undo or redo the Hey. But what does this mean? Why was this world created with the letter Hey? Because like the letter Hey, the world resembles an open corridor. See, whoever wishes to leave, they can do so. And if they want to return and do teshuvah, they'll be forgiven. Why is there a gap between the vertical and horizontal line? See, if a person does teshuvah, they fall down, and then they climb up and make their way back through the gap into the middle space of the Hey. The letter Hey encompasses all the energy of existence. The three lines of the Hey represent the three dimensions of our reality. The upper line represents thought. The right line, the world of speech. The left leg, the world of action. Now, we all nurture in our minds a vision of an ideal world. It's represented by the Hey's upper line. We have our thoughts by how we think the world ought to be, how we want our jobs, family, relationships to be. The world of thought is the world of vision and dreams. The right line coming down is the world of speech. We articulate our vision to ourselves and others. We tell others, oh, I wish I could do that. I dream of doing that. We bring down our lofty ideals into articulate words. Left line is the world of action. It's translating our visions and bringing down our words into the physical world. We draw down our thought into a more concrete reality. The leg comes down, vertical through action. The right leg is connected, for its idea is conveyed just as we harbour it. The left leg has a gap, because when you try to act on something, it's always easier said than done. That's why well done is better than well said. You'll certainly encounter resistance, conflicts, and barriers. Give it as an education as an example. You listen to lectures, you go to seminars, and you have a vision of what it means to be a good parent. But now you have to transform it into reality. You come home, the house is a mess, the kids are screaming, and you know that you're only peaceful when the kids are asleep. You have an errand to do, and it takes longer to get the kids in the car than to go on the actual errand. So there's a gap, because the world of physicality creates a barrier. Education in school is another example. You can go to webinars and seminars, read books on teaching, and you come out your classroom and sometimes you're just exhausted. Sometimes you find it really difficult to reach a certain child. And you keep having to change your tactics, change your modes, change your different methods of reaching that particular child or a particular group of children. My boss always says, if they don't learn the way you teach, then you have to teach the way they learn. But it takes time. There's barriers to get to that way that they learn. Now, there's a gap because the world of physicality creates a barrier. And in Gemara it says Hashem created the world in the form of a Hey. The gap leads to challenge and ultimately harmony in our life. Back to Korach. Kuf, the left leg takes its natural course and extends itself. This is the ultra-realist. The world is a kuf, and the action is disconnected from the other two lines. There's the world of dreams, but there's the concrete world of competition. Now this kind of person, they don't apply the same standards they have in their spiritual life to the world and the real interactions in the business world. The world of action runs its own course. These kind of people are the people that are going to find every loophole and are just going to moat the system. And then you have the Reish, no left leg. This is the ultra idealist. These kind of people, they don't want to become tarnished. They want to stay in the world of thought and words. They want to shun the world of action so they don't have to compromise their higher being. They eliminate the left leg. Ches, the left leg is attached. There's no gap between the various realms of creation. This vision of reality lacks a true awareness of the state of the world. These kind of people, they have a nonchalant and lazy way of dealing with situations and their aspirations because they don't see any gap. And these kind of people, they're satisfied with far too little because in the world of action, there is resistance. Or their idealism has been so compromised that they don't see a gap. They're blinded to the real struggle. Korach's fight against tzitzis, when you have a talis, represents the kuf. Talis represents an energy which encompasses the whole person, like a hug from Hashem, while tzitzis has individual strands which represent communicating things in an individual manner. The talis with tzitzis represents the concept of thought versus action. Action is always detail-oriented. It takes time and needs to be done step by step. The talis is an all-encompassing energy. It represents the world of dreams. It's holistic. Korach believes in the kuf. Let action take its own course. Don't bring idealism into the world of action. Korach argued, why do you need a mezuzah when you have a house full of Sifrei Torah? You have to take a physical mezuzah and put it on your physical door? Korach said, Reish, you have a house full of Torah. You need a mezuzah too? Why the need for physical mitzvah when you can stay in the realm of thought and speech? Korach's fight against Aaron, being the Kohen Gadol, represents the Ches. Everybody is holy. We don't need Moshe and Aaron. We're all holy. There's no gap. Thought, speech and action, they're all directly connected. We don't need someone to help us do the action. The Torah is about acknowledging that there are three realities. So the first one is there is a higher realm, but there's also a lower reality, and we have to engage and deal with. The second point is the higher reality must come down to the lower reality, inspire it and direct it. The third point is the lower reality must come up to the higher reality. Each one of the letters of Korach is a war against these three realities. The Reish says there's no lower reality. The Kuf says the lower reality exists, but the higher reality doesn't need to come down to inspire it. The Ches says there's a lower reality, but doesn't have to strive to go up. There's no tension anymore. We need to revolutionize the landscape on earth and generate the kiss between heaven and earth, which is what's described as the annulment of that decree. True harmony can only be achieved by recognizing, confronting and grappling with the dissonance between thought and action. You see, if we succumb to the gap, we're left with a kuf, a physical world that slipped below the line and has left the principles upon which it's founded. If we escape the gap, the Reish, then we create a world that's lacking its most important component, the world of action. And if we make light of the gap, the Ches, we're left with a fool's paradise, where nothing has been changed except in our imagination. Each of Korach's approaches breaks down into chaos. The chaos of Kuf is that the left leg can become wild and detached. The Reish can create chaos because ultimately the world will come to haunt you if you ignore it. And the Ches can create chaos because you're denying the dissonance that's true. And when you discover it, you may not have the tools to deal with it. The Torah only mentions the Ches because a person can deceive themselves that everything is fine, yet that's not the case. The Midrash mentions the other two because it wants to make us aware that the Kuf can think that his actions have no meaning and change, and the Reish can realize his knowledge isn't inspiring his actions and can also change. But at least there's room for growth. The Ches, on the other hand, which the Torah does mention, it lives in denial, and that's the worst and hardest to change. So each one ultimately perpetuates the conflict of Monday. You know, water represents pleasure. It produces pleasure and grows pleasure. And when we're by water, there's a certain sense of pleasure that's aroused. When Hashem created the separation, there was the higher pleasure and lower pleasure, which separates the truth from physical pleasure. Tuesday creates a synthesis. There's a separation, and now we have to communicate. Higher must go down and lower must go up. This gap is a constructive tension which crystallizes our goals, challenges our ideals, and refines our work in life. If we remain a kuf, a resh, or a ches, we allow the separation of heaven and earth to continue, instead of bringing them together in harmony, which is our purpose in life.